Okay, we know this is a big concern for so many of you watching. We have details of a telephone scam that has robbed millions of dollars from unwitting Canadians. The scammers pose as bank investigators, and then the tactics that they use are pretty hard to detect. Sophia Harris reports.
Hello? Melissa Plett says there was nothing suspect about an apparent call from her bank. The caller sounded professional. The phone's call display showed RBC.
It was very, 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 very well executed.
The caller said someone was trying to steal money from her account. He directed Plett to log into her RBC banking app and follow his instructions to safeguard her cash. After the call ended, Plett discovered almost $15,000 had disappeared from her account. She says RBC refused to reimburse her.
For you to finally have a little bit of a savings account and it just to be gone, it's like, I'm gonna cry now. It's just, you just feel helpless.
Plett is one of many victims of the growing bank investigator scam. So far this year, the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre heard from 677 victims of the fraud and tallied $11.7 million in losses, close to double the amount in the same period last year.
Well, what are you saying?
The actual numbers are likely much higher.
Right now, you are connected with the fraud department.
2 weeks ago, this reporter got the call. The scammer knew my full name and bank and used spoofing technology to make the bank's phone number appear on my call display.
I feel this is a scam. I'm a reporter with CBC News. Hello?
If they have personal information, then it makes it believable, right? You know, victims are seeing a number on the call display that they trust.
Even so, sometimes banks hold the victims responsible and refuse refunds.
The thing is, people were tricked.
This consumer advocate says Canada needs to adopt stronger regulations to ensure victims of the fraud get their money back.
They shouldn't be held liable. We have to take into consideration these kind of scams are very elaborate.
Ottawa says it's exploring stronger protections for fraud victims. RBC says it works hard to combat fraud and takes customer complaints seriously.
Okay.
After CBC News reached out to RBC about Plett's case, the real RBC called her and said it's looking into it.
Thank you so much.
If you get a fraud alert call from your bank, experts advise you to hang up and call your bank back to make sure that's really who was calling. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
So Sophia's story shows just how real and convincing these scams can be. So how do they work and what can we do to protect ourselves? Claudiu Popa is founder of KnowledgeFlow Cybersafety Foundation, and he's also the author of the Canadian Cyber Fraud Handbook, and he joins us now from Toronto. So Claudiu, you've called this scam an impossible request. What does that mean exactly?
Well, the fact is that fraudsters at the moment sound just like professionals, and a lot of people are expecting to be able to detect fraud just through intuition. Well, those days are gone. Now fraudsters make a living off of this. They make hundreds of calls every day. They practice on people just like yourself on a minute-by-minute basis. And they have perfected their approaches to the point where they got it down to just three things. An appeal to authority. They impersonate some kind of a government agency or banking institution or law enforcement. Secondly, they put a lot of pressure on you and they introduce the concept of urgency. And third, they apply some kind of a threat. So you should be able to detect some type of fear. If a call, any or all of these attributes, I recommend hanging up, I recommend reporting it, and I recommend calling a reporting agency, a law enforcement, the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, your bank, or anyone trusted, anyone that you can trust to report what just happened, because it's important.
And so, Claudiu, the $11.7 million dollars reported to the Anti-Fraud Centre, it does seem small, and that's because it's just a fraction of the real losses. Why is so little of this actually reported?
People are always embarrassed to lose their money. People are annoyed to get the feeling that even when they They wait for 10, 15, 45 minutes to report these things. They're told that they've just become a statistic, and it's highly unlikely that they'll make or get their money back. And oftentimes people are told that it's their fault. All of these are demoralizing. And so it disincentivizes and demotivates people from making these reports. This is why the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre on an annual basis writes in the small print that the figures that they release are less than 5% of reality. And that's why last year's cyber fraud, overall online scam losses amounted to over $9 billion, and it's been rising over the past few years.
Wow, that is a staggering figure. So, Claudiu, you talk about people feeling like they're the ones at fault. Let's talk about the banks. What's their responsibility in all of this? And are they doing enough to protect customers from these frauds?
Well, so I advise banking institutions, financial institutions, and so I can see from inside what their perceived feeling is of the situation. And almost 100%, they blame it on the victim. They blame it on their customer. They blame it on the individual who, from their perspective, simply received a phone call. That caller was a stranger who obviously impersonated the bank. That the victim was asked to transfer funds. They transferred their own funds willingly. And now that victim is asking the bank to bail them out and refund them. So from the perspective of these financial institutions, this is an unfair request. But really, from the perspective of the individual, if you put yourself in the shoes of the Canadian public, all you hear about is that the bank that you're dealing with has supreme security features in place. They have controls, they have safeguards, they have bank level security. So you get this false sense of security when you're dealing with pretty much any Canadian financial institution. And so you figure when they call you, it's got to be important, and you treat it with that importance. And so more people should be aware of the existence of what I call impossible requests, because they apply across the board to law enforcement, to government agencies, and to banking institutions. And they're always calls that defy logic, and they breach the norms of best practices. And we know intuitively that we shouldn't be moving money from account to account just because somebody on the other line, on the other end of the phone line, is asking us to do this. But it sounds so legit that oftentimes we do. So more communication is required. We need the banks, we need the government to all sing from the same song sheet and explain to the public that these impossible requests should always be ignored and reported.
Absolutely. All good reminders and good advice. Thank you so much for that, cybersecurity expert Claudiu Popa.